Thanks. I guess we're recording something. We'll start with Phil. Go around the room. Would you like to do roll call of the 14 Mile board members?
Phil Rockenbach.
Dave Willis.
Barbara Ray. Karen Knapp.
And Dave Trudeau. Okay, board members should have seen minutes from our last meeting, September 12th. Any comments, additions, changes? If not, I will accept the motion. Is there a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor of approving September 12th minutes, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Announcements. Anything to share? Anna, I know you're coming up from county stuff, but do you have anything about Cranberry Tour? I knew that was.
Yeah, so the tour that was supposed to happen at Horizon Cranberry, they got a little bogged down with the new facility going in at Heartland, so that the grow and tell at Horizon Cranberry is going to move to next year. So unfortunately, there will not be a grow and tell out there this year, which is fine. It's how it goes when you're working with producers during harvest. Their schedules get busy. Yeah. So. Okay. That's it for at least the grow.
That was about the only thing I know that might be coming up with that grow and tell. Okay, next up, Adams County report. What do you have to share with us? I know you've got some news.
I do have some news. So I recently accepted a position with UW Extensions as a natural resources educator. As some of you might know, this was Rachel Whitehair's position. So you guys are not losing me. I will still be around. I still get to act as support. I will still continue to work with farmers of the Rocha Creek, but also all producer-led groups in the area. So I get a lot more capacity building, and which benefits you guys, right? More connections I make are more connections that you guys can make. So my last day at Land and Water will be 21st, next Friday, and then I'll start on the 24th. Should be a pretty smooth transition because I'm kind of plugged in here already, and so I think I can hit the ground running. Other than that, in Adams County, what have we been doing? Everything. And so it's hard to summarize.
A lot of field days,
yep.
A lot of trainings, a lot of networking, a ton of networking.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of networking. Grant season, we're kind of wrapping that up. We've got a couple of grants to finalize. The producer-led grant got in for Farmers of the Rocha Creek. I have 10 separate Healthy Lakes and Rivers projects that I wrote the grants for. So we'll get the final grant.
Are any of those folks you're working with from Rome or all outside?
No, some of them are actually from Rome. I have Carson.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's really sweet. I don't know.
No.
I think you had more engineering involved.
He needed a little bit more engineering involved. So him and Chuck are working pretty closely. And then there's another new property here on Sherwood. They're getting 2 rain gardens and 2 native plantings. And then there are 4 projects going in on McGinnis, which is in Southern Park. So, yeah, other than that, we had Conservation Day. Megan hosted Conservation Day for the Adams Friendship 5th graders. So all of the 5th graders came out, and we had multiple stations with different conservation professionals. So the kids broke out into groups, and then all day they just got to bounce from station to station, and they were all hands-on activities, and they got to just see what different professionals do in the field. And Colton and I had a station together, and we talked about water quality. Not really anything upcoming right now. Next month will be the next farmers solution.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Anna? Kyle, how about from the watershed perspective?
From the watershed perspective, we put in a grant request with the DNR for an outreach event. I think, did I discuss that last meeting here?
Well, I read your long email out
You
loud.
mentioned it.
Oh, that's right. I was able to make that. That's right. Yeah,
We
yeah.
got your letter of support.
Okay. Yeah. So, did anybody have any questions about that grant or that mailing campaign or anything like that?
I think you want us to stop.
Yeah, if you guys can commit to some kind of volunteer action, like filling, packing the envelopes, that'd be very helpful. We do have a letter packer at work, but it gets scared of more than one sheet of paper. I've tried to coax it in, but
I know someone who's kind of captive that gets stuff on. Just saying.
he is back in the corner there. You know, can't really.
Just saying.
Well, we've only got 4,250 of them to do. So I mean, so I know that 14 Mile also had some kind of mailing thing in mind. So maybe that's something where we can coordinate because we can, you know, some of those lessons learned, some of the templates and stuff like that. We could kind of do that, but also some coordinating because another thing I'm working on is with the UW Extension and the DNR. Is a social indicator survey, and I know I mentioned this to you folks before. We wanted to get out a little bit earlier for this grant cycle, but that didn't manage to manifest. So we are working on that, and that would be going out ideally next spring. And we kind of want to avoid the timing of where they get material from Adams County for the watershed, and from 14 Mile Watershed Alliance, and from they'll also be getting tax bills around that time, and then also getting social indicator survey. It's a lot of things to be like answering, and then we don't want the confusion where they go, oh, did I already fill out this sign up for more information form or this join us form? And then they, you know, we want to avoid crossing wires that way. So something to keep in mind as we move forward with that.
Any questions for Kyle? I just wanted to clarify, Barbara and I were just kind of giving each other looks. You got the letter of support for that cap, right? Because that was the first one to go.
Right.
And for the annual.
Yeah.
That's is that still the November 15th deadline?
Right. So the DAC cap grant that she did, that Anna did.
Yeah, I got my letter of support.
That's due on the 15th of September. Okay. DNR grants.
I know I've got it done. I've got it on my hard drive, but Barbara and I are saying, did you send it? Did you send it?
Yeah, no, we have time yet. Yeah. November 15th.
So we will double check that. Make sure that you have that if you don't already.
Yeah, sorry, I got the grant in for clarification here. I got the pre-application for the grant in. Then, yeah, and then the actual application deadline is the 15th, but pending changes that Scott wants, it should be good to go.
Okay, Scott, is there anything on in your realm? Have a share?
The letter of support for the DNR grant goes written from my boss. I figured probably better if he could do rather than me. And other than that, it's all DNR work. Some issues, try to sort out some folks in Tri-Lakes and 14 Mile. Dan Bauman was over here to address some of that. Trying to get some of the communication improved. But other than that, it's pretty low key. Here anyway.
Any questions for Scott?
Colton Fish, we now have 1 year of full monitoring at the night site. Colton Fish.
What are the numbers looking like?
Well, the water table is into this that area, but we got baseline data now. It's all over the place from like 8 to 70.
Yeah, 8 to 70. Yeah, so
In the same
I'll be going
location
through it just
general.
Okay. It's crazy how much we do.
Thanks.
Okay, next I'd like to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Jesse Weinzinger. You met Jesse, he was at our State of Our Lakes event 2 summers ago when we were outside near the gazebo. On that kind of cold and rainy day. Jesse has a company called Eco Services. If you go to the website, you see that he specializes a lot in habitat management and aquatic invasive control. So I invited Jesse here to kind of share more about what he does with his business, what his background is, and you know, what kind of issues we can refer to him as a private business and what we can do collaboratively. That's what we're looking for, you know, another person in the networking pocket. So, Jesse.
All right. All right, thank you. Yeah, my name is Jesse Weinzinger. I started up a small private consulting company last year, LLC to this year, called Eco Services, and the tagline is expediting natural processes to improve shoreline condition. It's a fancy way of saying just put a little diversity into your shoreline, and you're going to see better effect.
I like the theme of it though.
Thank you.
Sounds really good.
Thank you. Go ahead and switch. So just before I go into the business, I really just kind of want to provide a baseline for those of you who don't know me, and it's like, oh, here's some company coming in here trying to profit or something like that. And really, I just want to pay it forward. I grew up in Wisconsin Rapids, went to Lincoln High School, graduated in 2008, moved over to Green Bay, got my bachelor's and my master's out there. As an undergraduate, I studied terrestrial. I was a wildlife biologist studying up in Nicolet-Schwamgen National Forest, doing mammal surveys. I hated the ticks and the mosquitoes, and I was talking to my professor, and he suggested that I go into aquatics because we're on the world's largest freshwater estuary, and we don't know much about aquatic invertebrates, specifically freshwater mussels. So I did my master's degree in studying freshwater mollusks. I've been working at the DNR full-time as a conservation biologist since 2016. So this business is actually kind of a small side hustle. And outside work and my professional existence, I'm an outdoorsman and a naturalist. So hunter, fisher. My wife and I, outside that, we like to go on hikes and we bird. I'm not very good at birding, but I used to be. And then my wife also works at the DNR full-time as the Karner Blue Butterfly Recovery Coordinator. So we have our hands in a lot of different places, and we really care about the environment. Go ahead. So at the DNR, as mentioned, I work to promote, enhance, and restore populations and habitats of rare and endangered aquatic invertebrates and fishes. My expertise is in freshwater mussels. So I partner with groups, nature centers, universities, schools, nonprofits, you name it, kind of like you guys have touched on earlier tonight, just to enhance and promote the awareness of the uniqueness of freshwater mussels. So I coordinate the Wisconsin Mussel Monitoring Program, and it's kind of your one-stop shop if you want to learn about freshwater mussels. There's a GIS portal on that website. So you, instead of trying to learn the 50 mussel species in the state, you can select a water body. For example, Lake Camelot's on there, the Wisconsin River, and you can just learn what mussels are in there and expand from there. And then we work with partners. You might know Brenton Butterfield from Ontario. He used to be my supervisor. And then we have volunteers in that photo, Fish and Wildlife Service. And there we're actually reintroducing a federally endangered species called the Higgins eye on the Chippewa River. Next slide. So it wouldn't be a presentation without promoting freshwater mussels for me. And that kind of stems from where I'm coming from in terms of trying to get a holistic aspect of watershed protection. using freshwater mussels as an ecological indicator because they rely on the host fish. They're very sensitive to various pollutants in watersheds. You guys were talking about nitrates. Mussels are among the most sensitive animal to nitrates and chlorides. Chlorides is another pollutant that you guys monitor in the watershed, is from what I'm aware of. So they're great ecological indicators of aquatic health. They improve water quality. So one individual mussel can filter out 10 gallons of water in a single day. Usually mussels are in huge, immense groups called mussel beds. So if you extrapolate that to an entire mussel bed, that's a free ecosystem service right there, helping improve water quality. And don't confuse them with zebra mussels, because that's a whole nother, another topic. And therefore, they can supplement in algal blooms. Actually, in Washington, D.C., in the Memorial Ponds, they actually supplemented some of their water quality improvements with freshwater mussels to get some of those algal problems under control. Improve substrate health and diversity. They have a foot that they can oxygenate substrate. And then just those pictures on the bottom, I won't go into their life cycle, but mention they rely on fish hosts. And to attract their fish hosts, they kind of mimic their prey. So that bottom left photo is actually a mussel that you can see here in the watershed called the plain pocketbook. And it mimics darters or shiners, depending where you are in the system. And so they'll actually twitch like a lure, and the bass will come in and try to eat that, and then it'll explode. And the babies, called the glochidia, will infect the gills and drop off after a few weeks. And then on the bottom right is my favorite state mussel, state threatened. It's called the pistol grip. In here you can see it. They're in below the Wisconsin Dells. The Montello River has them, the Wolf River, but they have a unique pistol grip. You can kind of see it. It looks like an old, revolver handle, or another common name is buckhorn. Kind of looks like the base of an antler in a sense. So now that you know a little bit more about my background, it was a couple of years ago where I really wanted to expand my knowledge in what I do. And to do that was just really kind of get in the water and do something I wasn't comfortable with. So at first, it's kind of brainstorming around, and I was actually in talks with Scott to start a river group in central Wisconsin, and we had a talk all lined up at McMillan Library. Reached out to Portage County and Wood County Conservation, and then COVID hit, and so that kind of fell by the wayside in part because my wife and I had this long-term plan of moving to the Fox Valley area, and we actually did last week. So, instead of traveling to Wisconsin Rapids for this watershed group, I tried to see what I could do to expand that area. And so I decided, hey, what about like shore bank management? What about fish and wildlife enhancement projects? And so I started this small consulting business. So as mentioned, starting last year, LLC this year, and I have clients on Sherwood, Camelot, Peppermill, Parker, and then Poygan over in Winnebago County. And the main services I provide is 95% of it is physical plant removal. So Colton or Scott might see some permits once in a while coming, Chapter 30 permits to remove either AIS or really a lot of times it's Falcon area. And the clientele is primarily people who just want all the weeds removed. They don't want to touch, their kids don't want to touch a weed. So, this is a multi-use watershed. Obviously, you got wakeboarding boats, jet skiers, paddlers, fishermen. But it's kind of unique because you kind of understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, you get to talk to them and be like, hey, well, do you really need a permit here and to remove 120 linear shoreline feet? Because if you do, that's a permit and you have to pay for it, or you can set aside this 30-foot area, plenty of room for your kids or grandkids to swim in. And if they want to fish, you might want to cast over by the plants over there. So it's kind of unique seeing these different stakeholder groups, because it's easy to, kind of, for me in working in endangered resources, to just work with that group of people. But branching out to people who, come from Chicago to their cabin and then go jet skiing, it's kind of interesting to learn their thoughts. It's like, why do you want to have a desert out here? And then more recently, by talking to these folks, if their shoreline is deteriorating, for example, this client, he just mowed right up to his shore bank, and you can imagine
pretty steep slope there.
The slope was starting to crumble. Well, yeah, when you have a manicured lawn, you don't have that root system to stabilize the bank. So he just wanted riprap, and I asked him, well, what about log revetments? Because the neighbor was actually doing selective cutting. And so I was like, we could just use his oak logs. The oak logs should last for a long time. And, it gives that aesthetic a little better than just straight up riprap. So I got to change his mind from straight riprap to a little more diversity in the shoreline. Tree drops, that's just been limited this year on my wife's property and our property up north. But it's very similar to fish sticks, where you just drop a tree in and then use earth anchors to stabilize them. Hopefully we expand. And maybe this winter I could help out with what you guys do out here. And then riparian planting. So on this client's bank right here, he didn't want to maintain it whatsoever. He just wanted to cut the grass and call it good. So he didn't want any, swamp milkweed or anything growing. But I was like, well, sedges are kind of similar to grass, and you get a bigger root system from those. So soon after this picture was taken, we actually planted sedges from the Prairie Nursery and Prairie Nursery down Westfield. So, all right.
About what width? I mean, did you go back 10 feet or 5?
5.
3? Or...
About 5, somewhere between
better
5
than nothing.
Yeah, better than nothing, absolutely. So just kind of the protocols and the considerations I follow. Obviously with Chapter 30 permitting, navigate those waters. Working with the landowner to understand that those laws. Fish and wildlife considerations, as you probably know, it was kind of late spring this year. It stayed cool well into June. So the kind of standard timeline for projects to start is June 15th when it comes to fish. But working with local fish biologist Jen Bergman, the basses and bluegills were still on their beds well into almost July. So I actually delayed a lot of my plant management to July just to keep the bluegills safe and their spawning grounds safe. And if they were still on their beds, I'd actually work around and keep the vegetation there around their beds. As prevention is always a huge concern, especially if you're working in Camelot and Sherwood with the zebra mussels. So I follow DNR protocols, using chloride solution or bleach solutions, hot water, and let air dry for a week before I move on to non-AIS infected waters. Compost, I work with the landowners, especially if they're gardeners, and really promote, especially Vallisneria and a lot of these other weeds or plants that they don't have the fibrous roots, so that you can, use into your compost and promote soil health. And then follow best management practices from DNR and NRCS. So you may have seen this guidebook, Shoreline Stabilization, developed by NRCS and others, extension, I believe, as well, and show you kind of the options landowners have to improve their shoreline. And so I use the log revetment guidance from that book to do the previous clients, tree drops. There's guidance features on there for that too. And then, yeah, this winter I'm going to be working with the DNR to become an official restoration contractor. So on the list. So bridging the gap, it's just, as mentioned, what I said earlier, it's just working with those landowners that have unique perspectives. You know, if they just bought property to come up for the weekend and go, you know, recreational watercrafting, working with them instead of trying to get the permit, maybe just setting aside a smaller area or some patches of native plants. But, you know, like I said, the bulk of it is just removing the weeds for their pleasure at the moment. But hopefully expanding on them to increase diversity in their waterfront property. For example, the property that you see on the right, they actually didn't like the riprap that was put down. I'm not sure who did it, but it was an angled riprap. And so she actually wants to remove it and replace it with something else. So I don't know exactly what that would be. But, you know, that might be something where, you know, we could all brainstorm because they're just pleasure crafters for the most part. But, you know, we might be able to enhance diversity on their bank. And yeah, I don't have any pictures of the tree drops, so we did that as well. You know, I have another client that has a seawall that is on the north Camelot. And they want to have some sort of barrier that's not just the wall, but enhance it with, you know, first thing that comes to their mind is riprap, of course. But if we could enhance it with something in addition to riprap, you know, there are options there. Because I probably have 15 clients on the Tri-Lakes chain. So, you know, and I'm still learning a lot doing this. So I would love to, you know, learn from you guys, what you guys might suggest, because then, you know, when I have these talks with them, I can be like, oh, you know, XYZ had the idea of doing XYZ. So, you know, expanding outward from there. I'm really excited to continue this venture down that road. Yes?
You mentioned removing the weeds, I think.
Yeah.
What are you doing? How are you doing that?
Oh, it's all manual. Okay. So, yeah, you know, I expediting a natural process to improve shoreline condition. I don't use chemicals, and I don't want to use chemicals. So right now it's all manual. I've explored using diver-assisted suction harvesting, DASH they call it. So that might be in the future, using basically almost like a modified dredging system that other watershed groups use. So that might be in there, but right now it's just, you know, an old rake, trying to uproot the weeds with a rake. So, yeah, I'll be out on the navigational channel between the two Camelots, and the boat will come up, go to the Camelot Lodge, and come back in the afternoon, and I'm still there raking, you know. So, but you know, at the same time, I'm learning dragonflies by their larvae. I'm learning what freshwater mussels are there. I'm trying to expand my knowledge on what plants are there.
You mentioned you didn't want to talk about zebra mussel. What if we did? Is that something that is worthwhile to try to get rid of, or they can't get rid of it? I know in the last studies of how to get rid of it.
There's a lot of studies. You know, there's molluscicides, but there's no molluscicide that that I know of that can effectively eliminate zebra mussels without affecting native unionid mussels. So
nothing target specific.
Right, and that's where, you know, the Clean Boats, Clean Waters Act program is so important, which I forgot to mention, I used to be a part of with Barb back in 2009. And that's another thing. It sounded like there was trouble trying to find somebody to sit at the boat launches last year. And with my other job at the DNR, I work with universities and there's kids always looking for summer jobs. So if you need help promoting, happy to. But yeah, zebra mussels, that's a rabbit hole right there. Yeah.
So with the log that you were using, so how does it work? It's just different than putting out rocks? How do you anchor it?
Yeah, so
dead man in there or something?
What's that?
Is there a dead man in the bank?
Right. It was actually a very soft bank. But there is with that log, there are 3/8 galvanized cable at each end of the log, and then it's dug in. I wanted earth-bill or duck-bill earth anchors, but they're a little more expensive than the screw-ins, and for that type of soil, it actually worked out really well. So so far so good. That was about 2 months ago, and the condition has responded well.
You know, I like what you're doing, and it would be really great if you came to our State of the Lakes next year and possibly gave confidence, because everybody in the 3 lakes that I've seen, especially on Lake Sherwood, do rocks. That's all they do.
With the wave energies and the narrowness of, I mean, it's not surprising that's the first thing that comes to mind, but are there other alternatives?
Right.
Absolutely.
Or combined.
Yeah.
Right.
And practices that, yeah.
Yeah, and the riprap that serves its job. It dissipates wave energy, but it's just that it's kind of like monoculture grasses do its job too, but you want to include diversity into that. So just trying to promote that. The log is more aesthetics. I could say, it provides habitat for odonates to, and it can, if I use smaller logs, you'll see a stream bank stabilization, they'll use whole bundles of logs or large tree revetments more so. But a lot of times the property owner doesn't want that on a lake, on a recreational lake, that's more stream. So we're trying to, navigate those lines.
Because we have there's no diversity.
Yeah.
There's like one company that's doing everything.
Right. And some of them do a very good job. I was on a property over on Sherwood, actually by Norb's house, his neighbor, and I did Norb's as well, just for weed removal. But the way they were stacking rocks was really incredible. But at the same time, he was booked out 2 years, so there's an opportunity there for somebody to fill that void and maybe do some of these small scale projects like that. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think we met before last year at a Golden Sampson for a forestry event or something, but I wasn't sure. Anyway, so my position here is watershed coordinator for 9 Gallon Plan. I work a lot with Scott, and so I'm talking to a lot of folks around the lakes and talking to a lot of folks in this watershed. And a really big challenge that comes up is Dave and the county could sign up so many more people for Healthy Lakes if we just had figured out a way to get them in the ground or into the water. And the contracting is where it gets really tight, and trying to find people, especially as people move up here and they buy a new home and they just moved in and they want to make some changes. The only options right now are for people, especially for landscapers and contractors who are going to try to sell them the standard projects and what everybody else has, and that's the big challenge. It's like, well, okay, who are we actually going to get to do the practices? Because of course we have a contractor. If they do something to NRCS standard, if they do something to DNR grant standard, then they might underbid. They want to put that project in, and they have to come back, and it's just this big hassle, and they might not get paid for months until that check comes through. And obviously, I'm not suggesting that this would take out of your job, because there's more than enough projects to go around. But how how can we meet that need of getting enough practices in to start changing the expectation that it's riprap? I mean, even the logs are good because aesthetically it looks different than normal riprap, and that starts changing the conversation. So, I mean, what could you see from, you know, you've got sort of an insider outsider position here, right? So how can we bridge that gap from, you know, the small, you know, scale jobs that you're doing and the need we have with thousands of houses on the lakes and only 1 or 2 contractors who, while they might do high quality riprap work, are still doing riprap work, and they're not able to engage with these grants because there's all these people with tons of money to spend through Clean Boats, Clean Waters, and no one to be able to deliver the install.
Yeah, so
sorry.
And I, to be honest with you, I don't know too much about the Healthy Lakes program itself. I know bits and pieces, but I don't know how some of those, like you said, the check might come later. You know, the property owner gets reimbursed. You have to be a 501c3, I believe, but I just
or government entity.
Or okay, government entity. But I would say is, you know, if you can just get that one reference property, you know, like you have with Norb and he's got the 14 mile Healthy Lakes, or the sign right there. Yeah. So, you know, you can see, you know, what an end result will be with one of the projects that you're promoting. So we just need one or two of those property owners to buy in, to look at, you know, that guidebook and be like, oh, instead of riprap, let's do this, or let's suggest this. How do you feel about doing this instead of just riprap? And then, you know, maybe have a promotional sign, you know, right on the waterfront, because there's so much boat traffic that word will get around, especially that navigational channel. So where you have to go less than 5 miles an hour, no wait. So, you know, I didn't advertise this year at all. Last year I just went to next door, and I don't even know what else I did. Well, I had the booth at the State of Our Lakes. But word gets around. I mean, once you have that one reference property, just point them to it, and, you know, hopefully it'll take off.
Really nice showcase that makes a difference.
Yeah, and like the property right there, I talked about on the bottom right. That's just a before and after. You know, I guess I didn't even talk about too much about this, but the property owner, she built a beautiful house on Lower Camelot. They bought the property like 2 years ago. She has grandkids and kids that want to utilize it, but they were almost scared to go in the water because you know, the condition that was in. And now they're out there more times than they're in the house, and so now they have a connection to the lake, whereas before they didn't. Yes, you know, a lot of that was Valsinaria, and not milfoil or curly leaf, but still, I think the greater appreciation of the water, you know, was a good substitute for, I guess, sacrificing for the greater good. But as the lady has, I think, 90 linear feet of that angled riprap, and she wants to get rid of it. So it's like, well, if we have an idea to come up with to promote, you know, next year, whenever she wants to do this, like that could be the goal, that could be the standard right there, and everybody's going to see. And then her neighbor, who I do both of their properties, because if one does it, the other one has to do it. So maybe she's going to buy into that same strategy then as well.
Well, if you could, I don't know if you could, but if you could like encourage all these property owners to do healthy lakes,
yeah,
you know, and we'll just native plantings. It doesn't have to be healthy lakes. That's just giving them money to do it. But basically native plantings, you know, for multiple reasons. So if they take out the weeds in the lake, and then they put plantings on the shoreline, it's kind of balancing it out, you know, and that's a good thing. And also, you know, they're stabilizing the shoreline, they're filtering the water, you know, they're preventing the geese from going on their property. So there's all kinds of benefits.
Yeah, it looks good.
And it looks good.
It looks so good.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Norb's property shows it every year.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that, and also, you know, you could kind of work, you know, we could collaborate with you and, you know, work right through Dave to do the healthy lakes, you know, tell them we've got the in right there. The other thing is, I don't know if you know this, there's a new product out that we're actually experimenting with right now called a native vegetative mat. Have you heard about that?
I don't think so. It's put out by agriculture.
Yeah.
We went down there.
Yeah, it was
and looked at their facilities.
Well, it wasn't, was it
Yeah, it was.
It was in a different, it was two different.
But I think the main
Yeah.
It's way out of that. It's hard to get to,
it's like hard to get to.
Even with the GPS.
So basically, this native vegetative mat it's pricey. So to do a 350 square foot, you know, section, which is a project, it would be like $1,555. So it's more than a typical native planting. But the good news is
It's like sod, just roll it out.
Your labor is way down.
right, but a lot of people like this. You said is a woman with grandchildren, so she might not be young. So it might not be something she could do herself because I think it weighs 150. What did they say it weighs? Yeah, it's
per
pretty,
roll, which is 4 square yards.
right, which is 4 square yards. So it's really heavy. So like somebody like you could come out and roll it out, and then you have to put little clips in it, you know, to get it good. And then the other thing is, then you have to have water on it, you know, consistently for 2 weeks, and then you start doing it once a week. So there's things, but we would love to work with you on these things instead of having these other contractors come in and just telling them, just put in the riprap. And that's it. Because that's not working. You know, that's not gonna work.
What kind of plants do those mats
It's
have?
a great mixture. I can send it to
native.
you. I'll send you. It's all native.
Oh, wow.
So there's
And we just recently got the list in those plant approved for healthy lakes grants.
Right.
Okay.
So those are, so there's 2 that we presently have. There's 3 total. So one is a rain garden, wasn't it? And then the other was a short and showy.
One, I think it's called, it's not rain garden, but it's something like that.
It's so they have names for that.
Well, one was for shade and one for sun, I think.
Was it? I can't remember.
No.
But anyway, so it's a really great product. But the good news is, so you don't have to, typically when you put in a native planting, you have to put in mulch or something, you know, as it you know, gets mature.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to have things growing up. This is so dense.
Right.
It's literally like, you know, a sod. And so you don't have to do any of that.
And they're willing to spend money as it is. So even if it is a little more expensive,
yeah,
that's no problem.
Right.
Almost instant gratification.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Right.
So
So
they literally gave us a roll of it. We did half of it in parts and half of our house. See how it's going to come in next spring.
Oh,
Right.
realistic. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. Please send me.
yeah, but if you could give us, I know it sounds ridiculous, but if we could work with you and so that we can maybe encourage your clients, you know, we could be the backup to you saying, you know, if you want to contact the Mile Watershed Alliance, they're really working with a lot of people in here. Because that's what we do.
Okay.
We're getting a lot of people to do the healthy lakes.
And if you're looking at rain garden or the native plantings are done in 350 square foot.
Okay.
Increments.
Perfect.
So if you look at a site that's at least 350, say, might you be interested in a $1,000 grant? You know?
Oh yeah. Okay.
And the thing that's important to know is so one of the other local contractors did a native rain garden for one of our members here for the 14 Mile Watershed Alliance, and he was not given the correct plants. So he didn't I don't even know why. I don't even know if you know why.
I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, I don't know.
I bent over backwards and got plants to three different options.
Right.
And he's still.
But the problem we have is we were
saying,
working.
I'm going to do ferns and asters.
Right.
That's not true.
So what I'm thinking is, if we were working with a contractor, because we're all for that, then we could work, with you to make sure that these, the community members, the lake owners aren't using the wrong grant.
Right.
You know, so that they ensure that they're getting the right grant.
Sure.
You know, they're fitting the grant.
Right.
So those are the kind of things.
Well, even if they don't use grants, we'd love to see someone come in and find put logs in 2, 3, 4 feet of natural plants. That looks so much better.
It does.
And then it's going to filter some of that surface water that's on a bad rain going into, you know, or groundwater.
Right.
I mean, we literally spend our whole summer going to the Rome Farmers Market and talking to people one-on-one. And I can tell you this, after a conversation with them, they get it. You know, they see the blue-green algae. They know that it's, you know, not usable at the end of the season, you know, the summer season. So they understand, like, that's what's really nice is getting the one-on-one, you know, talk, having a conversation.
Yep.
So that's what we're trying to do. So, but people usually get it. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention, you know, we're talking about showcase sites. You mentioned just a little bit, Kyle, what you're planning with the, like the storyboard stuff to be able to.
Oh yeah.
Showcase.
So
right, the map.
yeah, and just feeding off what Karen and Alan were speaking about is that's the challenge, is having people who can actually install the practices, right? It's people who want to spend the money, but even if you get a contractor, they don't know where to find the plants and to do it. So something that I'm talking about, that culture and trying to change those expectations across the watershed. Another project I'm doing this winter at Stack is putting together a story map where it talks about the tri-lakes and the shoreline and how we interact with it, and it'll have a full map where you can scroll through and you can select a site, and then it'll show you what was planted and have a little story about how that person did it, and being able to pull in examples from people that aren't healthy lakes. Because one of the challenges is, right, hey, this summer I'd like to get this problem solved. Great, contractor has availability, and oh, I got to wait till next year for the grant cycle to go through. It's like, okay, being able to fill those gaps. Somebody just wants a solution more quickly or wants something done. So being able to highlight both private industry and public grants and different options and different stories of how things got into the landscape, really useful. So around the lake, right, there'll be like a highlight section. Then you can kind of explore it, like see who your neighbors are, or look at your neighbors, look at your neighborhood, look at your bay, and see, hey, how many of these projects are restoration projects? How many of them are done with an ecological perspective? And so, in layman's terms, on this map, it'll just be little featurettes. And on that, we can say, hey, these are done by this contractor, by these people. Here's how to get something that looks just like this. Does your yard look like this, X, Y, and Z? We could do, A, B, C. And Bob can do it. That sort of connection and having those profiles. So it's like a digital parade of homes.
Yeah, or Zillow.
Like in
Zillow.
I mean, how many people look through, aren't even looking at houses, they're just checking it out, and they're like, oh, I like that, I like this.
Exactly.
Beautiful landscaping. It would be the same kind of thing, but on the lakes, where you can really get a profile for just how many people are actually doing these things, who did them, and then direct links to tools to how to get it done on your side. Like, do you want to go through grants? Is that too complicated? Here's a private individual, throw more money at it.
Yeah. Because it's so difficult to find examples of, shoreline enhancement projects like that. That guidance book that I referenced by NRCS that shows a couple pictures, but the one that I mimicked was way up in Bayfield County is where they did the project. So unless you live in Bayfield, like you can't see that example. So if there's an online, something to point to, that's fantastic.
It's also really helpful because like you might not have a one size fits all that works with the grant. Okay. So maybe you want to just do something else, and then you can get a private individual who will be able to make that. So being able to highlight that's really
fantastic. But we really want the contractors to be whole. We're going to start trying to work with them just to use the plans and the selections that the DNR provides, because those are the ones with the deep roots.
Right.
So we're having a hard time kind of getting our lake owners to understand that not all plants are great on the shoreline. Yeah. Because then they think, well, like a bunch of hostas up there. That's just not going to work, right?
Right.
For firms, right? Yeah. So those are the kind of things, that's the details that we're trying to get into.
Yeah, and I'm happy to promote anything that you guys are putting out there, you know, just to put the bug in their ear as we're talking about options for them.
One thing we hear about a lot, people asking with their shoreline degradation has to do with muskrat activity. Do you have any references of folks that trap? That's where we're one thing that we're not able to help people locate very well. I mean, there's kind of a list of tri-lakes, and
Kaysen still does it.
Yeah, he's about the only. You know, I mean, there's a list of 20 trappers. Kaysen's about the only one who seems to be active, willing to come out. There's no market anymore.
No.
Yeah. I was gonna say, doesn't Scott trap? Are you a trapper?
Last 4 or 5 years. Yeah, I trapped my whole life.
I did have a client this spring saying that she had a muskrat problem. I'm like, well, I got some live traps and I got peanut butter and apples. Like, let's see if I can. I didn't have any success. So. But trapping season only goes, I think it's what, November to March or something.
Yeah, you can trap year round on property for muskrat damage if you have written permission signed by people.
Okay.
So,
but they're not. Yeah, pelts are obviously worth nothing.
Yeah.
And worth very little in season.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you. You were talking about mussels, which you're very passionate about.
Yeah.
So, is there any mussels at all?
I've only found dead shell in Camelot. Sherwood, I haven't spent as much time. I'm not aware of any. You know, Roche Cree was referenced earlier, and there's good populations there. We actually did a project with Fish and Wildlife. They had a train derailment on Mississippi, and they needed common species broodstock to propagate from, and we took the broodstock from Roche Cree because there's a really good population. And then they had a surplus of about 20,000 mussels, and I took a couple thousand and used them with EWSP to augment populations in Mill Creek, Clover River, and the Wisconsin River, and do some projects with their the Wildlife Society there. So, you know, that could be a possibility. I don't think they would survive well in the lakes as they are now, but, you know, upstream of Camelot, where before it turns to trout water, right in that kind of, was that 8th Avenue there, where the bridge is, right in that estuary, you know, if they're going to be in the lakes, they're going to be there. And, you know, there might be potential to augment that population if the fish hatchery has surplus.
The only thing is, you said they don't like nitrates.
Right, high nitrates. Yeah, it sounded high.
To be fair, Big Rocher Creek can test upwards of 40 ppm too. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
How do they have?
Yeah, so
that's the question, right?
Yeah, so that's about depending on the species, some are more pollutant tolerant. And that was one of the species that can handle, you know, 40. So others are a lot more sensitive.
So do the zebra mussels, do they affect them?
Yeah, big time, because their mussels are filter feeders. So just like any intake, you know, they're going to encapsulate that intake and essentially suffocate them. But if you have softer sediments, mussels can actually bury down in the sediment and hold their breath essentially and slough off the zebra mussels. So like places like Green Bay, where you think they're all vanished, we actually found them in these unique areas where they're prospering just fine. Yeah.
So what do you tell anglers who say, oh, zebra mussels are good because they clear up the water? Oh, that's
yeah, well,
my dad says it to me just to tip me off. He knows that it's a hot topic.
Want to talk about the energy imbalance?
Yeah.
More selective feeding.
Right.
Yeah. They spit it right back up.
Do you get that ever
I do.
One of the issues why you may not see too many mussels in Lake Sherwood and Camelot is 2002 study done, and some of the sediment has Because there's so much copper use over the years.
Oh,
The sediment is so toxic. For the mussels.
what was copper being
Yeah,
used
what was
for?
copper?
Algicide, right?
Yeah, copper sulfate. Most
Oh,
yeah.
Well, they were doing it in all the lakes, so why is it just those two?
Well, I don't know if it's down in area two or not. I don't know. It depends how much they use too.
Yeah.
You know, like if you don't use it unless the algae's there.
yeah. Yeah, heavy metals. Mussels are gone if there's any heavy metals in the system.
Okay, any other questions for Jesse? No, we'll move on. You'll stick around if you think of any more questions. Corner Jesse after when we break for the food.
We buy the barbecue sandwiches.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Let's move on to some of our committee reports. Let's start with you, Karen. Publicity, kind of a few items on the agenda. Why don't you just go through it at your own pace?
Okay, so we had the farmer's market. We had the last day was September 30th, so we're looking forward now to the winter farmer's market. And I hope you guys will, continue to keep helping, man the booth. I just got the dates from Carly, who runs it, and it's going to be, they're not all like the same day of the week type thing. So it's like just it's once a month. So there's only 5 that we have to man. So it's not a lot to ask people, but it's going to be December 2nd will be the first one. And then January 13th is the second one. So I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. So I'm hoping some of you can do it. I'm not going to be in town on December 2nd, so I won't be able to do that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that we have a Halloween party coming up. So I hope, again, you guys will help us with that. It's going to be October 29th, which is Saturday, from 1 to 3. We're going to hand out candy. So we have to get like 250, I guess, pieces of candy. So we're going to need people to be in costume. It'll be fun. So, dust off your Halloween costume. And I have some ideas about that. So if anybody wants to help me with that, let me know. I'm really help on that. And then the big news is today we had our very first field trip with Nakusa High School. And it was a resounding success. And the reason I say that is because Keith Johnson, who is the Nakusa High School principal, basically told me that. So I was really excited about that. Awesome. Yeah, so we had wonderful speakers. We of course, talked about our committee. And then we had Anna and Colton and Kyle. And then we also had Sarah Winju, who is from UW Extension. And she came and did a great speech about the relationship between the economy and water. And then she also gave the kids a lot of opportunities for what they can do to get involved. So basically the theme of it was to inspire and encourage these environmental sciences students to either get involved on their own or get involved with us, or find some avenue that they can get involved with clean water. So they were very interactive. We had a really good time. I don't know if you guys want to talk about it. It was a really good. Then we went to Sand Valley. So the last thing we did, we went to Sand Valley. And Chelsea, what did she say? Sorbo Willard. Yeah, but she said that the way she says it, like puts both names together. I can't remember how she said it. But anyways, she did a phenomenal job talking to the students, and we did a long hike. I'd say it was like maybe a mile.
Seemed like
yeah. It was about a mile. And so, but she gave a great presentation on Sand Valley and the restoration work that they're doing. I found out some great things. They got like 7,000 acres they're currently working on. I had no clue about that. So it was really a very wonderful event. And we might be doing this again in the spring. So we hope everybody will again join us there. And we'd like to have different various speakers come and talk about it. So talk about other subjects as well. So we'll be thinking about that. What else do we have? Is that it? Oh, the watershed highway signs I'm not working on. Who's working on that?
Don and I
Are
are working on it, and we're making slow progress. We don't think the signs on the county roads are going to be a big issue, but the fellow I talked to who's in charge of state highway signs for this region said, and this is with reference to a watershed, entering 14-mile watershed sign on Highway 13, several places, said, oh, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you do that in Wisconsin. And he was going to follow up and let me know. And then Don did send an email to Mike Engelson and Eric Olson to see if they had ever seen a watershed sign on a state highway in Wisconsin. And they think Mike Engelson said he thought there might be one down on Sugar River.
There has to be a precedent for us to have
well,
watershed sign.
the fellow I talked to was on that day was headed down to Madison for a meeting with colleagues. And he said, well, I'll check with colleagues, and if I know of any who've seen this in the state, I'll let you know. And I haven't heard it. So there's some more following up that has to be done. We'll find out what happened at Sugar River, Upper Sugar River, I guess it is, and see if there is indeed one there. And then I guess if they can have one, why can't we?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, why can't we be the first?
Well,
I mean, really?
Actually, our representative Scott Krug has someone from his staff investigating this, and we haven't gotten any response, positive or negative yet on that. So we're gonna hope to at least get the county signs in, County D and County Z, before the ground gets too hard to dig signs in. So. And that's coming soon.
They're already made.
No, I've got to call him to the Patrick Kozlowski. He's at the highway department, and I haven't got a call back on that. But I want to find out if they have the capability to make those signs.
You might want to try going through Land and Water to get those signs, because I don't think they will print them or. Like a department outside of the county. I think they're only printing signs for departments within the county. That's what they made it sound like to me.
Oh,
so working on that right now.
So we'll check with someone from Land and Water, huh?
Kyle's your man.
That sounds like something I could shoot.
Hey, you're there till the 21st.
I am.
Just for the whole group, if anybody has time to look online, do some searching for people that have identified. I mean, Kara's found a couple of examples. I mean, you don't want to start designing from scratch, but if there's something out there you run across and you say, oh, that's the striker site.
So what I'm hearing though is there might be some issues along the road in the right of way putting signs. There
on the state highway.
On the state highway, is there an option such as like there's a state priority watershed further south, and they have some older signs that need a little bit of refurbishing, but it's sort of like a welcome to Wisconsin or welcome to Rome. It's just like a very small billboard kind of thing off the side of the road on private property out of the right of way. Would that be an option to make the sign a little bit bigger and get a collaborator, somebody who owns some property adjacent to 13? To install that within regulations.
Right. I think that's a possibility, and make it farther with something like that than with a sign on the right of way.
Okay. So maybe start fundraising for some billboards.
I'll volunteer to pay for the sign, and I'll put up property to put it on. It's outside of the right of way on County Z, on D or Alpine Drive, which is entrance to the watershed. I have property on both corners.
Wow.
So one or the other.
That's wonderful.
Or
that is
I think as long as you're outside the right of way at a certain distance, then there's the billboard rules don't really apply.
Well, the town has some rather stringent rules in regard to putting up signs.
Okay.
So you might want to check on that. Still have problems with the stuff. But at any rate. volunteer to pay for it. All right, John, I'll be in touch.
Appreciate that. No, that's great.
Thank you.
That's it. Date in January for the end of farmers.
That is 13. Yeah.
Oh, the 13th.
Right. So it's December 2nd and January 13th, and that's February 10th, March 10th, and April 14th. I don't know where these. Wait.
So it's the second one except for December.
Right. That's why I couldn't.
Well, probably too close to Christmas.
Oh, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
So then February 10th, March 10th, and
April 14th. Yes.
thanks.
And you know, those are the ones that are winter, the indoor ones are really kind of fun because you know, you don't have to worry about weather. You don't have to worry about a canopy like
no wind.
No wind. So, and also they serve
have some
food there.
fans circulating.
Yeah.
I know, it's a head hazard.
Not for some of us.
True.
Will, can you do us an update on stream lake testing? And,
Yeah.
Aquatic index.
Yes.
Yeah, just quickly, we did complete the CLMN lake testing last Monday. So we're through for the season with that. And as soon as I get all that data back from the lab, I'll put the last of it out on the website. Let's see, we finished the September stream testing on the 25th, and I'm still waiting for data on that as well. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first stream testing was done in November 2017. So I think
that's asking a lot.
Well, I went and looked at Colton's data, and it looks like that's when we first started to get.
That sounds about right.
So next month we'll mark 5 years of
You can
continuous
take a look at that
stream testing.
and run some statistics on it to see if we got enough to say, hey, to start doing some change, you know, from the watershed or something.
Yeah. All right.
You definitely have a baseline.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that's changing up there yet. So
it doesn't appear that.
Right. So
and the current grant takes us till December of 2023. So
right.
At least we got funding for that.
Right.
And I don't know
if we want to if there's nothing's happening as far as PMPs up in the watershed, then yeah, we're not gonna monitor this.
Once you have your baseline, then you just start looking.
Wait until you start seeing something happening up there, and then we can see it.
Yep. All right. And tomorrow morning at 10, we're going to do a biotic survey at the S curve. So Colton is going to help with the bug identification.
I loaded the gear up this afternoon.
Okay, very good. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay. That's all I have.
Look at the moon through the window.
I gotta get going.
Yeah, really.
Oh,
Orange.
Well,
Wow.
yeah.
I don't think it's more much, Scott.
Whatever, I'll email.
Scott,
Make yourself a sandwich
we're
before you
going
go.
to talk about
Yeah,
the
where'd
goal
you go?
thing.
What's that?
The goal.
Yeah, there's something I want to bring up. We could talk about anytime, but there's a group similar to you guys that formed after you did over at Juneau County and called Guardians of Lake Decorah for gold. Real great group, good group, fun group. They're moving a lot of stuff, and I don't know if you guys be interested in getting to know some of them. Or
Yeah.
Actually, we met them kind of through Wisconsin Lakes. So they were there presenting.
yeah, I had them present,
Yeah.
you guys present,
Right.
but
right.
I want to make that connection of what's going on. Yeah.
They are
Shared
shared.
dinner.
They're
Dinner.
fun. That'd be great. That would be great.
Yeah, they have meetings, once a month too. It might be one of those things that, let's do a joint one, maybe there, all here. They like to have their meetings at taverns.
We're in.
They have the Friends of the, or excuse me, Farmers of the Leavenworth Valley PLW there, Mile Watershed there, and there's generally quite a few of farmers that attend theirs too. So.
Well, definitely send us their information about the meetings.
Yeah, all right.
I was in there,
How to contact them? Well, I'll make sure if you want to get a hold of Tanya Patrick, she's the. I'll send it to her. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. All right. You guys have a good night.
Thanks,
John.
Drive safely.
Okay, next on the agenda, we'll talk about grants. We have the education grant that the 14 Mile has. We'll hold up our sign there. I think we shared that a couple times.
Yeah, we shared it. So this
we,
is the
we
sign.
just got some feedback from our student groups that it might go through another iteration after that.
And of course, Jesse, whatever you want to, we're working on it. So what they said, we need to put a QR code. Yeah, it's QR. And then we need to change this from go to 14mile.org and say something like, you can become a hero too. Yeah, join our team, our hero team, and then put that.
Their feedback was nobody goes to websites.
Right. When you say go to, everybody like
nobody follows.
Yeah. I mean, the kids were great. They really were. So go ahead.
Okay, that's about it. And I think on the surface bar, I mean, because the highway signs are incorporated in that. So let's see, Healthy Lakes. I've had accumulated a list over the summer of 30 people. We're up to, as of tonight, now 5 projects have finally gotten their paperwork back in, so that's good in that meeting. 3 folks this weekend that are weekenders, so hopefully we'll end up half a dozen. So so we do what we can do. Fertilizer clean cooperator, still got the sign. We got a pretty adequate supply, I think, at the rate they're going out. So I would like to say we're running out, but we're not.
You know what?
It kind of peaked and then
it kind of went up.
We're still kind of looking at, I'm still looking at the doing a native planting on the slope going down to the water along the park. We're really interested in trying to accomplish that quickly by using the native vegetative map. So we're looking for grant funding for that. One of the issues with that site is that there's no well or there's no electricity. So part of that grant is going to have to be to figure out how we can buy and run probably a portable pump across lake and waters. How do you get somebody out there to run the pump on a regular basis and not have it stolen? Or so a lot of details to work out before we. I mean, so we're probably looking at at least next year sometime on that kind of a grant. Let's move on to finance, and one of the things you wanted to mention again is it sounds like repeating a tree and strip sale bar.
Well, it just happened today that I got the information from the county so that it will be run again. And they are offering some plants that are going to be bigger than what they were last year.
Really?
Well,
if they get it, yeah. The nurseries have stock. Generally, Megan finds out really last second if they're going to be that year's, like, which size they're going.
Nurseries are better by default.
No, we get them from there's one in Michigan.
So do all the other counties pull from the same source?
Yeah.
So
Megan works with all the other counties and they'll put in like large orders. One of the largest nurseries we use is in Michigan. So all of the counties will put in their order at one time and then they just bring one truck.
Get bulk rate.
Right.
Do shipping.
Right. That's a good idea. Right. So they just bring one truck from Michigan over and then I think one of them was like Old Springs Nursery. There's a couple, but Megan has had it where, you know, they'll tell her right now, yep, we'll get you 2-year transplants. They'll look fabulous. And then a week before pickup, nope, you get like the little 8-inch yearly. So
we did the 2 things.
Something supply chain.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But I think it was well received last year.
It was. It was.
Also ended up being profitable for us.
it did, yeah, we made about $1,600 on it, with it. And so it's a lot of work. And I'm willing to do it if I get help from you guys again.
Yeah,
You know?
we'll help.
Okay.
But we would like it, other than the little tricks, and that they give us all that they were supposed to. That was really a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So substitutions at the last minute
Oh my
wasn't
gosh.
too well received.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And the other issue that we had is that the deadline that we set up to get the orders in by, when we place those orders in with the county, some of the stock was already out. So it's like first come, first serve. So I guess what I would suggest this year is that we encourage people to get their orders in as quickly as possible, rather than holding it till the deadline to submit it. We submit several orders as the orders come in, and do it that way.
Deadline was last year, but we want to try to.
I think it was like January, early January. So we want to, you know.
So we got to.
So they start ordering now.
Well, yeah.
We already have orders.
So now, yeah, so now that we've got the list of what plants are going to be available, I'll put together a letter and we do it through the newsletter.
Sure.
Get
That
that out.
sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I just might recommend is look at how many you guys sold last year and what might help it operate a little bit smoother on your guys' end and on our end. If you say this is how many bundles we are going to sell, and set yourselves a limit. So order 5 bundles of white spruce and so on. So then you have a specific stock, right?
Oh, okay.
So then you're first come, first serve.
Then we
And you're just buying them from Land and Water, and then you get reimbursed whatever you order. That might be easier on everybody's.
Yeah, and we have the history from last year too.
Right.
That's good. I think it's good. Okay, so is everybody wanting to do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, I'll get it ordered.
So no, my back
You get hold of Eileen, the Camelot newsletter. They had a deadline of today for their winter newsletter. So maybe you can call Eileen and see if she can still get something in on it. If you can do something tomorrow.
Yeah, but what can she do? She can't like do the order. I mean,
No, but she can put an announcement.
I just announced. Yeah.
Get the word out.
Yeah.
Kara, would you like to throw out your idea about maybe doing a native plant set?
Yes. So, and so I need the date that we would be getting the stock in, because I'd like to coordinate.
Okay, well, we don't know until the last minute.
Oh, really?
It's in April.
Within a week or two, right?
Yeah. Okay. Because I use Glacial Ridge to do a lot of to do some of my plantings for my native planting, because getting stock from 1 or 2 nurseries just isn't doable. And so they didn't have certain plants that were on the list. So I ended up going to Glacial Ridge. They sell flats at $32 a flat, which is really an incredible price.
25% of what
How much?
it was cost.
$32 a flat.
And is that 32 plants?
18.
It depends on the plant.
Right, it depends on the flat.
Yeah.
But so you have to order 8 flats. So I ordered 8 flats. It was not that big of a deal. And so those are the kind of things that if we ordered bulk and then we did it maybe in coordination with the tree sale, people would be more inclined to try native plants if they don't have to buy 350 square feet. So we were thinking, we do the same thing.
If they didn't want a full flat. So.
Right. They could just get 5 plants, or they can get 10 plants, or they can get whatever they want. So we were thinking that with you guys, that's a good idea.
I think the biggest thing is, when would delivery likely be something like that? Because agree.
true, that's a good point, so maybe we could do it together.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
probably
so-
not together, but we still.
We could do it, but not try to coordinate it.
Right, that would be great. And then the other idea I had, that I have is maybe we could do it at the, you know, there's the choose to reuse at the transfer site. I was thinking maybe we could set up like a little booth and sign friends there, but I don't know if that would work. I mean, that's, people are just coming to, you know, do the dumb stuff.
It might not be the right audience.
No, it's probably not.
You might be able to tie that into the farmers.
That's a great idea. I never even thought about that. That's great. I like that. So that would be something. Yeah, we should think about that. So, yeah, so if, but again, you guys have to help us. It can't just be, you know, me and Barb or me. It just can't. We all need to pitch in. So, all right, that's my
Anything else, Barb or Phil? Finance, treasury, anything else reporting? No. Okay, we'll move on then. Partnerships, we're looking for more people to come and share information with us, like Jesse did tonight. I don't have anybody lined up beyond this month, so.
We could ask Chelsea, Sand Valley. I mean, she could talk about restorations.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend getting somebody like Corinne from Mile Watershed Alliance to come in because they're extremely advanced and like, you know, you guys are 5 years into the process, package is 20 years into the process. They are light years into the process. And there's something really, that'd be really good to inspire us through the dark days of winter and come and talk in, especially about past Corinne. I can
you just
I'll get you the
send it to
And what was the name of the group?
That's the Fox Wolves
They're
Watershed
phenomenal.
Alliance.
One thing I might suggest is that you guys take these winter months to maybe connect with other groups and like Scott mentioned, have those shared meetings, right? Everybody's kind of in the downtime right now.
Maybe a travel meeting instead of, you know.
Travel meeting, not just your group members meet, you know, Farmers of the Russian Creek, you could do Central Wisconsin Farmers Collaborative, or right. There's a lot of other groups, but
it's a great idea.
Okay, kind of with the networking, I mentioned the 2 letters of support that went out. So, lake reports. Anybody have anything to report on activities on Sherwood, Hemlock, or Krogan? Okay, town, county, Tri-Lakes Drainage District. John, you got anything? Updates on your?
Yeah, we had a complaint about high water from a landowner a recurring complaint that maybe we put to rest here just recently. Sadly, it involved trapping beaver on one of the ditches. Really no more to say than that. I walked the ditch to see to it that we weren't in a situation where we needed to actually get in and do dredging. There was a distinct possibility that that was the case. Sadly for the landowner, I don't think that this is going to help him. I had a conversation with Kyle in regard to high water tables before the meeting, and we're still suffering from the floods that we had in the last 5 years or so. Just for what it's worth, your drainage board is being well represented by people in this district, not just myself, but we have 2 others from the district here in a 5-man situation. So we're talking about the full county. We're, as I say, well represented and very well represented by agriculture. 2 of the 3 of us are agriculturalists. One is Jim Bielmeyer, who you folks met at the Cranberry open house that he put on last fall. And the other one is Bob Wyatt, who is a potato farmer. Actually, he's on the edge of our watershed here, but he's in the watershed at the same time. So just put a couple of names out there. Good people both.
So we for the liquor headlines, Alex management update.
Newsletter. I don't know if this is going to be in the catalog or Sherwood. If you haven't seen it, it's titled Twilight's Management Fall 2022 newsletter. It is not going to do us any favors with our farming partners.
What did they say?
Basically said that the line that we've been spotting, about 50% of the nutrient load coming from the lakes, 50% coming from agriculture, is actually 90% agriculture.
So
I challenge them to substantiate that.
Is there evidence that
they cited a bunch of stuff that's I'll defer to the chemist and
So there's one. So the Wisconsin Groundwater Coordinating Council is one of the groups that they cite. Their annual report basically mentions the same. There's also one from the EWG talking about trying to quantify the total load of manure versus applied fertilizer type thing. So
if you look at who is writing those articles, and yes, they may seem like they're from these entities, right? The one that wrote the manure, their geospatial background. So they do GIS, that's what their degree is in, not manure management, not nutrient management. And then Kyle and I, while we were not at the Tri-Lakes meeting, have sat down and watched the recording. And there are things that we are working to address with Colton and with Scott on how to, I don't want to say play cleanup on
make sure correct information is being represented.
Well, the problem is the body's arrowhead that we've been, our environmental and architectural committee is trying to get to shore up in the Ozark, Healthy Lakes feel. They're going to read that and go, why am I doing this?
Right.
So we're like, well, and unfortunately, the gentleman that wrote this is,
well, one of the things I think that has been our challenge from the beginning is education. So and I'm starting to, when I talk to people one-on-one, tell them that science is what we try to base a lot of our information on. And we have to give people the tools to know that they can't just listen to whatever people say, that we need to back it up with something. So those are the kind of
It can be hard though for people to back that, say, when you have somebody, saying, oh, well, look at these statistics, right? I've talked to a biochemist, I've done this, I've done that. Well, they sound really educated, but are they scientifically literate? No. So Kyle and I and Scott and Colton have been working together to just simplify some of the actual science for you guys and for the community. Kyle, you just talk about this because I don't want to steal your thunder.
So I've been doing a deep dive on studies in the past, and myself at the office here in Land and Water. Carolyn's helping a little bit, so she's got a lot of background in our new staff member. She's got a lot of background in science communication, and there's a challenge because not necessarily everybody in this conversation are acting in the best faith. They don't really care. Some of them are putting on information without validating first, right? I mean, we've seen this issue with high cap wells and water level issues. We've seen it with COVID. We've seen it with all sorts of different issues where there's some people just will cynically want to accomplish anything they can. And so, with whatever information. So we do have to kind of pick the battles of how much time do we spend on trying to make sure that the correct information is represented versus rehashing the same arguments over and over again. So part of this is I will be putting together a fact sheet, common misconceptions and misunderstandings throughout the watershed. That's going to go out to 4,250 residents that will talk about that. But part of that is doing the deep dive, because here's the thing is, we get this number, 50%. Now, something in Tri-Lakes is really, really challenging in this area is that we get somebody new regularly in this watershed. People, this area is seeing a huge boom. Adams County is currently ranked number 3 in the state for new construction. I just talked to some contractors for work in my own home and they said they are booked out solid and growing. So we constantly have new people coming in, the conversation keeps getting rehashed. And so it's very tempting to just say, well, it's 50-50. Well, yeah, but what does that mean? And so actually taking the time to go into the details to explain where we got those numbers and how we got those numbers and educate as many people as possible about that preempts some of the misconceptions, because we have a large body of neighbors who can say, oh, well, actually, I learned about this, X, Y, and Z. I mean, it's the same issue with climate change, right? Where we have enough people that go, well, yeah, but I mean, there's certain facts that are up for debate. Now, in this, I am hoping to do some programming where we bring in local leaders from lakes associations, townships, county board, districts across the board, and do a short series. I've mentioned this before, where we focus on science of watersheds to try to bring that level up. So part of being able to, and part of that conversation will be being able to discern data. A very popular thing we get here is the question of what we've done monitoring for 5 years. Can we see the hotspots? What are the trends? What's going on? It's like, well, the system this large, you need 5 years to get the good picture. You need just to get your baseline before you can move on. And explain that complexity and what's going on is important, but also having short explanations that go beyond just the experts tell us it's 50-50. For instance, being able to explain, for instance, that when you look at that monitoring data that we've been doing for 5 years and that's been going on periodically for decades, you see that the amount of nitrogen, or the amount of phosphorus, this is a big focus in that study and in the references, the amount of phosphorus that enters Camelot is less than explains the amount of phosphorus we see in Arrowhead. So the phosphorus in Arrowhead and Sherwood are higher than can be explained by the amount of phosphorus that enters in through the streams. And that is that we have extremely robust science to demonstrate that data from partners in Tri-Lakes, data from you guys, when you guys doing that as part of them, and now independently from independent things, even the soil borings show that, right? And so, the 2000 study did. So they did boring that they're replicating now anyway. So that original 2000 study showed that. So we know there's internal loading. Part of this, and so there are explanations where we show the data, but part of this conversation too is we burn a lot of fuel on this. And I think being able to try to shift that conversation to just say, so what? Here's the deal. If 80%, if 90% of those nutrients come from farmers, so what? That means we still have 10% on the lakes to handle. And here's the thing. Looking at the data, a 10% drop in phosphorus, algal blooms happen because there's tipping points. There's enough phosphorus in the system to tip in a bloom, and then that's fueled by all that nitrogen we have. If we lower that, if we raise that tipping point, the distance between our current levels and that tipping point, even 10%, you get below a threshold where you can start seeing differences. And that's the thing, even if it's 90% the farmers, the 10% of work we could do here would make a difference. And because we are the closest on this lakes, I'm saying we guys in this position, right? Because the lakes are so close to the water, what happens on the lake shores is immediate. What happens in the farming land, so what, 90% over there? Great. Anything that happens there, we won't see for 30 years. Okay? 5 to 30 years, which means that the only thing we can actually do as a priority as lake districts, as homeowners associations, as Arrowhead, is actually the lakes. The only thing that will actually make a difference as a call to action in any kind of short term is those shorelines. But that also means that even if 90% of the nutrients comes from agriculture, the shorelines have the most power to actually make a change because they're so close and because it's the thing that we all have agency on. We're all involved as folks in the lakes here, representing here, right? Obviously, I mean, I don't own property here, but so that's kind of the conversation to arrest that whole line of conversation, because you're just gonna get dragged down to it. Say, so what?
I'll tell you what the
so what, right?
I'll tell you what the so what is. And we should all eat, by the way. So everybody should go eat.
Yeah.
But the so what is basically that they're going to say, and I've been in this conversation, right. They're going to say, well, if they've got 90% and we're doing the 10%, why should we even bother? That's what they're going to say.
Right, and the answer is because 10% matters.
I know, but it's hard to convince somebody. I mean, these people aren't listening to.
Right.
It isn't. And you know what? I'm really a big believer in facts.
Right.
In science.
But if you we're cherry picking the data, which is possible in any kind of study.
Right. So misinformation should be taught.
Absolutely. There's two tactics here, right? There's a challenge because a lot of people, here's the thing, is that people who are going to be swayed by the data will be, but people who won't be, they're not swayed by the data because they're more attached to a narrative. Instead, they're more attached to a story. And if you challenge that story straight up and say, yeah, but so what? Like, even if that's true, it doesn't make a difference on how important it is in the lakes, because the other part of it is that the lakes are the only thing that have the opportunity to make it better. They're the only thing that can actually filter what we're given. And so regardless, there will always be nutrients coming in. The only thing that can make a difference in the end result, because we're in the bottom of the basin, is shoreline practices, is practices in the lakes. And so, if somebody's not going to be swayed by the data, challenge the narrative.
I have to tell you though, with the one-on-ones that we have at the farmers market, we're able to really have a good debate with people and get them to listen to logic.
Right, challenge it.
Right.
Challenge it on the basis of facts.
We really, the thing that's good is we don't need to challenge it. We just kind of work with them.
Yeah.
We kind of bend when they start, hitting us hard. And so for the most part, a lot of people bring up politics and I say, this isn't politics, this is science. And I also ask all these people if they've been vaccinated, and they all have. So, because a lot of them are old. So they said they all got vaccinated. So I go, well, that's science. You did it because of science. So we're doing this because of science. So, it's really a one-on-one situation on situation.
Yeah.
Right? And you just have to be thinking. And the good news is Al and I were in the other camp. Okay. We were like, oh, the DNR can't make us do stuff. And so now we're in this camp, so we get that. We get that whole way of thinking. So that kind of helps. But everybody should eat.
Our next scheduled meeting is 11/14, second Monday. Unless something comes to fruition with reaching out to some other groups, let's have that on the schedule. And if it changes, we'll get that information. John.
Just 2 minutes of your time, please. I've been working independently with the Water Environmental Analysis Lab. Kevin Mazarek and Dr. George Kraft retired, and some other people that I don't care to identify at this point in time. Some of these people are agriculturalists. Some of these people are agriculturalists in the watershed. Some of these people are very, very interested in water quality. These people are very, very well connected to the point where they're connected with the user, the end users, as in McCain. McCain's has recently come out with an edict to their growers that they, pardon my language now, either shit or get off the pot as regards to what they're putting into the earth. This is right at a tipping point. I'm hearing this crap, pardon my language, but I'm infuriated by what's going on with Tri-Lakes. I left this group because of those people. You all know that. I don't want to say anymore. I'm losing my patience here. But what I'm trying to say here is that we're right on the verge of doing something enormous with, I'm not going to say exactly who, but with some agriculturalists and a fairly large number of them, hopefully.
And that's the market force from coming to bear, as consumer attitudes.
Absolutely. So we've got that on our side, if you will, that's pushing from the top down. not moving from where we are up, talking up to people. So when I hear this sort of thing, all I can say is that the demographic and the Tri-Lake system is very top-endish, if you will. And we all know that. A lot of the people of that top-end group are conversant with a large number of these agriculturalists because they also are top-end. So what we're seeing here, or what we can see, is a bombshell that's going to drop, and I won't say it's going to, but it may have a very serious deleterious effect on what we're trying to do in the upper end of the watershed. So what can you do about it? I don't know that you can do anything about it, but I just wanted you to know that there is some real serious work going on, and we're getting very, very close to getting some decisions made. If this thing leaks out and I go to a meeting and Mr. Houlihan says, "What's this?" How am I going to answer?
But what can I suggest something? I was just going to say, you know, if I was in that position, I would say that's 5 people on board who made the decision to do this. Come to a group like ours, which is a lot more people who are, you know, definitely working, trying to build partnerships with farmers. So, you know, it's kind of like the rotten apple spoiling the bunch type thing. And by the way, is a government organization, isn't there some rules about disseminating this? Oh, what am I thinking?
There would be libel, but this
Yeah, never mind.
I forgot I was living in the United States. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of write off what John was saying, Kyle and I both work really closely with producers in the area, right? You know the producers we work with. They know what's coming their way, so they want to be ahead of the game. And when John says that there is a big shift, there is. Just write it out. So when Kyle and I are trying to help you, you know, share these facts, share the correct information, it's there's a big shift, and you guys just have to write it out. So I understand just as much as you guys get really upset about this, well, we do too, right?
One driving from there.
Right, but the more people see the correct information and are well educated, the easier it is for everybody around to look at that and read that and say, I know better. So the more you educate, the less support something like this will have. So write it out. Change is coming.
And that's where those relationships are important, because here's the thing is you're working with people, especially agriculture, they have long memories. They know it's about relationships. That's where I was saying, you know, those neighbors, you have those educated neighbors and they mentioned something. If you have more people talking about this, but also developing those relationships, there's voices where, for instance, Thomas Houlihan can talk to the several people, including myself, who he's been talking to, where it's like, hey, so what's going on? What's the pulse? What's, you know, are there people we can work with? And they know there's people they can work with. And this is not their first rodeo. This is just, again, like I said, new people move in. Every couple of years, there's something new. There's some new crisis. There's some new social media push. There's some new smear campaign. So, you know, they've weathered it before. And the thing is the hardest thing is to be patient, right? And to just very progressively and very actively present information that is accurate, and to really develop those relationships with people. So that way, in your conversation, not combatively, but just challenge the beliefs by saying, oh, so what? Why? What about it? Right?
Well, one of the things I do say, and I feel very comfortable in saying this because it's absolutely true, but the board members on Tri-Lakes right now, not one of them have attended anything instructional or educational. They haven't gone to any seminars. They know less than the average person on the street, as far as I can tell. They've never attended a Wisconsin Lakes convention. They don't do any of that. So, you know, and I tell them we do those.
He goes to some producer events.
Well, but he's also in the legislature, and that's 1 out of 5. You know what I'm saying? So the reality is, I've never seen any, including Scott Klug, on any of the stuff I do. And I look for all of these. So, you know, that's just reality. That's the fact.
Okay, I would
accept the motion to adjourn. And let's
eat.
Let's eat. That's some good food. Karen baked the cake.
Yep.
Thank you to Al for sharing his birthday cake with us.
Thank you. Move to adjourn.
And
I second.
We'll accept contributions to help. Oh, sure. Defer the cost.
well.
And you can stop recording.